If no one has a failure, it means that they're not taking enough swings at bat. They're not taking the risks that are required for innovation.
It's important, and I preach it. And I have a direct report who came to me, and we were talking about this. And he's like, I have a hard time with that because I'm so worried about my image. I'm so focused on keeping my image there that I always perform and I don't make these big mistakes. And I said, that's a great part about you. You're going to do it, but it's also going to limit you. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good enough.
Welcome back to Between Fires and Futures, the podcast for IT leaders navigating the tension between putting out fires and building what's next. I'm your host, Tonya Terrell. Here's the truth. The role of the IT leader has changed, but not everyone got the memo. It's no longer about system stacks and service tickets. Today's IT leaders are shaping experiences, building trust, and driving innovation across the business. So the real question is, are you evolving with the role or falling behind it? My guest today is Jason Frame, CIO at Southern Nevada Health District and one of the most grounded, future-focused tech leaders I've met. Jason's been in the trenches leading IT operations for public health through the COVID crisis, overseeing massive infrastructure modernization, and pushing back against the IT as a cost center mentality. Jason is part of a new wave of CIOs redefining what leadership in tech really means. He's an award-winning government tech exec, a two-time top tech honoree, and he's modeling a new kind of leadership that puts people, experience, and empathy at the center of IT strategy. He's speaking on stages about it and is a go-to voice for human-centered leadership. So let's dive in. Jason, thank you for being here. I think this is a really important conversation to be having right now, especially with AI pushing the pace of change.
Yeah, definitely, Tonya. And thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear your insights and to be able to share that with our audience, because I think this is, a really relevant conversation and not one that I'm hearing in the space that much. Mm-hmm. So I'm really happy that this is what you wanted to talk about. So
yeah, it's something that a topic I've been really excited about over the last about year and a half. I really started to develop it out just personally here at the health district, but then also being able to go out and speak to other audiences about it too.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more. So you've said the role of IT leadership is evolving. How would you describe that evolution? And I'd love to hear, what it looks like in your world there.
Definitely. Well, I think, if you think back to the days, back in like the early 80s, the IT leadership position really evolved to more of a CIO level. That really came out in the late 80s, early 90s. So you had all these IT people coming out of their server rooms and out of the basements and saying, we want a seat at the table. We got that seat at the table, but then we continued just to be a technologist for a long time. Later on, late 90s, or through the early to mid 2010 area, you started to see more of a focus on, as a CIO speaking the language of the business, trying to understand the business more. But there was still that dichotomy of the IT and the business. And then, mid 2015, in that time frame, you started to say, well, no, IT is really part of the business. And you're starting to grow that a little bit. And then COVID hit.
Right.
And what happened? IT was the business.
Yeah.
And
100%.
Everything happened because of IT. And I think in that point, the leaders in the C-suite and the owners and the business leaders really started to understand the importance of IT better than any technologist could ever tell them. They saw it in the real world. And it became about what is their experience like? And that was when I really started to dive into this, thinking about the experiences when we're sending people home. Well, we don't want to just give them a cheap laptop and hey, you can do your job, but it's not going to be a great experience for them. They're not going to be as productive. They're not going to have a good time with it. They're not, it's going to be frustrating for them if things are breaking all the time. They're used to going from 2 big screens down to 1 small screen. So we started focusing on how can we make that employee experience better? And that took a little while to figure that out, but we continued to do that and evolve that practice here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we launched our business about 6 weeks before lockdown. So we saw it firsthand. And, I've been in the space doing this type of work for 20 plus years. And when we launched in early 2020, we've historically been a lead generation company for tech companies. And the way that tech companies generate leads never made sense to me. We were on the front lines talking to IT leaders all the time. And what always made sense to me is we don't have to generate demand. There's organic demand out there. Let's just flip the model and serve the IT leader in whatever they need. And then, of course, 6 weeks later, the world shut down. And it was really, really clear. IT leaders are influencing everything, business growth strategies, because technology is an integral business driver. But COVID really, really hit the fuse because they weren't just supporting operations. They were leading public health rollouts, virtual care, remote work infrastructure. And it really showed the business what IT was capable of. So I still hear some, executives talk about IT as a cost center, which is shocking to me after they've survived and lived through COVID, because the organizations that really thrived were the ones where IT had a seat at the table, helping shape strategy and enabling connection and driving continuity. So, yeah.
And a lot of those times, and what I've seen a lot, some of those companies still, they say the same thing. IT is just a cost center and that type of language. A lot of that is where the teams and the leaders didn't prove themselves or didn't show themselves. They didn't focus on the right stuff. They were still going in there talking about technology. If I'm going into my leadership team meeting, I'm talking server models and network switch models and that, I've already lost the group. And I think a lot of technologists, they have that hard time of taking that step and not using their jargon, not using their experience, but also, having more of a people focus. And that's where I think the next gen tech leaders really need to focus on different things. The technology is a part of it, but that's a small part. It's really the managing the people and leading with experiences, leading with the empathy, as you said, and really becoming more of a people manager.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me what that looks like there for you.
For us, that's a good question. We really focus on customer service. We spend a lot of time teaching all of our employees that, the other employees here are our customers. They're not just other employees. And so we have a customer focused mindset. And we're the same with when we're working with the public and anything we're doing. So we're looking at what the experiences we have. So, we have employee experiences that we focus on. We have patient experiences that we focus on. We have external customer experiences that we focus on. And we try to focus on the experience and then work our way back from that. So when we're making IT decisions, do we need to upgrade this hardware? What type of servers do we need? What type of networks equipment do we need right now? It all goes back to how is it going to impact these services that we have? And so we're very cognizant of the changes that we make and how that might disrupt what's going on here or how it might enable it. And we always try to frame it as how can we enable and empower our users to do more? And so a good example of that, last year in July, we switched from on-premise phones on a Cisco phone system to Microsoft Teams. We got rid of all the desktop phones and then we went to soft phones. That was a big change. We'd been using Cisco desk phones for probably 20 something years. And it was kind of a shock to people. So we started socializing that about 8 months before, getting people to understand what they can do with it and showing them the benefits of having a soft phone where you could be on a meeting on your phone or on your computer, but you have to leave. You can transfer it to your phone and continue that meeting, or vice versa. You start the meeting in your car on the way here. I mean, we probably shouldn't do that. I shouldn't say we should do that where you're driving, but we know it does happen.
But we do. We do.
But then when you get to the office, well, you can get off that little screen, now put it back on your main screen and continue seamlessly. We also shared it with a lot of our field staff workers, like the food inspectors that are out in the field. They're talking to the restaurant owners, or our nurses who are out in the field doing patient care, that they no longer have to give out their personal or their district-wide cell phone number. They can give out their office number and it can still ring on their cell phone. They can get that call anywhere they're at. So we started socializing that, showing them the benefits of it, really minimize the part that, oh yeah, you're losing this piece of equipment you've lived with for so long. And we had very few complaints. I was actually very surprised at how few complaints came in. And another thing we do, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, but we do survey our staff every year, all the leadership, on a satisfaction and value survey. And we did the survey not too long after we did this switch. So I was expecting our numbers to go down. I was expecting, the negative blowback of this change. And I was surprised that our numbers actually went up and the people were actually pretty happy about it.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. So what do you think, the vast majority of IT leaders are actually getting wrong about the evolution of their role right now?
I think that it's still too much of a focus on the technology itself, and technology for technology's sake rather than experience sake. And so for me, it's, that experience that we're driving should control all of our decisions. And it's just a different way of looking at it from the end and working your way back rather than, taking the step that we've always done is, what do I know? Yeah, if we upgrade these servers, it'll make things faster. Well, how does that translate to their experience? I think that's the step that we're missing.
Yeah.
And then, part of it is because, when you're gumming up in the ranks in IT, you see if someone is really great at what they do and say, well, let's give them more responsibility. Let's promote them. And you start promoting people into supervisory roles and management roles and leadership roles. And they might not be gifted in that. They might not be ready for that. And then what I've seen is when we do that, we're not good about giving them the resources they need to continue to grow. It's like, well, you were a great tech, let's say server admin. We're going to make you the supervisor of that. And they're not comfortable in that role, and we're not equipping them correctly. So we're putting them, really setting them up for failure.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. What are some blind spots that you're seeing among IT leaders who just haven't fully embraced this shift yet? And maybe what's your advice to IT leaders in order to make the shift?
Yes. I think I'll go with the advice first. I think that's a good way to do it, is, start learning more about the, experiences, employee experience, customer experience. Start learning more and understanding that model so you can start working toward that. And then really start working on what they call the soft skills. But I call them those are your essential leadership skills.
That term really drives me crazy when we talk about, especially, women in leadership and the soft skills, because they're the power skills.
They are. They're the necessary skills for the future.
Yeah.
And so I think, start focusing on learning about those, learning about and practicing how to be more empathetic when you're working with your staff. One of the things we work on here quite a bit is psychological safety. If my team feels safe to make mistakes, they feel safe and know that as long as they're trying and they're doing their best, that the effort is going to get rewarded, not just the results. If they do make a mistake and they hear that we cover for them so they're not looking bad in front of our leadership, it starts to build that psychological safety.
Yeah.
And once you have that, your team really becomes a lot stronger. They work together more and they become more innovative. Because they know that, we're willing to take risks, and they're not afraid to, admit to the mistakes. They're not afraid to, or they won't make a mistake and hide it. And then when that comes out later on, it gets even worse. They'll come right out and say, you know what, I really made this mistake and here's how we can fix it. And so I think you start to build better teams, and those teams like to work together and they stick together.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've kind of gone through this with our team recently where, we really want to, and we've been celebrating failures because that creates some of that psychological safety. And if no one has a failure, it means that they're not taking enough swings at bat. They're not taking the risks that are required for innovation. So I love that you touched on that.
Yeah, I think it's important, and I preach it. And I have a direct report who came to me, and we were talking about this. And he's like, I have a hard time with that because I'm so worried about my image. I'm so, so focused on keeping my image there that I always perform and I don't make these big mistakes. And I said, that's a great part about you. You're going to do it, but it's also going to limit you.
Yeah.
Don't let perfection be the enemy of good enough.
That's right.
Because then you don't get stuff done if you're not willing to take those risks, then want everything to be perfect. This is not a perfect world. So if we ever get to that point, now it's going to way down the line and it's already too late.
Yep. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I literally just delivered a workshop to my team on perfectionism and done is better than perfect. We can iterate, right? And either way, even if it doesn't work, the risk, it doesn't work, you're still getting valuable feedback.
Exactly.
And it'll point you to what might work.
Yeah. To me, the only time there's a failure is when you do something and you make a mistake and you don't learn from it. That's the failure right there.
Yeah.
I think learning from your mistakes is just a part of growth. It's a part of innovation and it's part of maturing. But if you're not learning from those, you just keep making the same mistakes over and over, then that's the failure.
Yep. We are so on the same page about this. What do you wish more IT leaders or just leadership in general would unlearn today?
Ooh, leadership in general is tough. For IT leaders, unlearn the IT speak.
IT leaders.
Yeah, unlearn the IT speak. I'll give a great example. Last year, or every year, we do a thing for our chief health officer, and we give a list of all of our accomplishments. And those go into a report to the board, and they're part of his annual evaluation. And so I asked my direct reports, the managers underneath me, to give me that list of accomplishments. And it was this 2-page long bulleted list. I'm like, great, there's a lot of stuff in there. Now, think about it. Our health officer was a doctor. He was a physician. Write it for him. How are we going to write, make it where it makes sense to him? And so they came back with a shorter bulleted list, but it's still pretty much a bulleted list. And it was talking about server models and all that. And so I'm trying to get them to understand that, when you're talking to these different types of people, it's got to speak their language. So I took the time, I rewrote it, and then I sent it to them and shared with them, here's the differences. And I think they really saw it at that point, how differently the results came out.
Right.
And so it's, understanding who you're working with, understand their language, and try to use their language when you're helping them out with the technology.
Yeah.
Another one that I did that we experienced great results in, we're talking about cybersecurity. And, we're trying to get people just to have a security mindset. About 5 or 6 years ago, is before COVID, we had a phishing email come in. And within 10 minutes, about 450 people clicked on the email.
Ooh. Fortunately,
our firewall blocked it and there was no damage done. But that told me we need to start educating people. So we started this path of, some cybersecurity awareness training. And I went out and I started meeting with all the different groups to talk about why we need to do this. And I was meeting with all of our clinical services staff at the time. It was about 180 people, mostly nurses and providers. And I was trying to think how to talk to them to get them to understand the need for cybersecurity. And, something came to my mind. I just went with it, and it turned out really good. When I was talking, I said, how many of you know what the Hippocratic Oath is? And they all, of course, knew what it was. Do no harm to your patients. I go, well, if you're not careful with their data, you're doing harm to them through their data.
Oh,
and when I put it in that light, I had a couple of nurses come up to me. They're like, I never understood it until you said that.
Yeah.
So really trying to speak the language of your audience, understand what they are doing, what they're going through, and help them in that way. And take the tech jargon out of it. It's, deal with them as people.
Yes. Yeah. That's brilliant advice. I mean, I do talk to tech leaders a lot about speak the language of business, but you've taken that a step further and said, speak the language of humans and what's important to them. And I love that.
Because even the business language, I think business leaders, you see like accountants and the financial leaders, they'll talk too much of the finance and not, and not socialize it out to the right place. Your legal team will be very legalese about things. And it's hard for people to understand that. So try to, narrow down and, a tip you can use, take what you want to say, run it through ChatGPT and have it clean it up a little bit, or, Grok or any of those other ones that you like. And then say, now write this for this type of audience at this level. And it'll change that wording a little bit. And as you start doing that, even if you're not going to use those exact words, start thinking in that way and learning that, because it'll now become part of your lexicon and you'll speak that way to those people.
Yeah, this is such great advice. And that's such a practical, actionable use of AI too. So I love this.
Yeah. And you can do that on the free version. That's the nice part about it. You don't need to, you don't even got a subscription for it.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the importance of building alliances outside of IT for IT leaders.
I think that's a crucial step. You need to know who those people are that you can go to. For some reasons, let's just say for like projects, who will be the ones that are willing to take the risk and be the beta testers or the guinea pigs, and you build those alliances up. And then, and more practical reasons too, is just having those alliances so that they know when you come to them with an idea, it's for the betterment of their part of the organization.
Right.
And you've got to build that trust up. And we do that in quite a few ways, but earlier I talked about how we do an annual survey, and we work with Infotech, and they do a business vision or CIO business vision diagnostic, and we send that out to everyone that's a supervisor or above. And we do that in November. We get the results back around Thanksgiving, and then early December, our IT leadership team gets together and we go through all those results to start planning out for the next year. And then what we then have done, where a lot of people kind of fall short, and I've seen this in a number of organizations, not just in IT, is we do this survey, we get this great information, but then in the past, we weren't presenting that out to the people again. We weren't showing them the results. So what we started about 4 years ago was getting together with every department that took that one-on-one. So our whole IT leadership team with those departments, and sharing the overall results and their departmental results, and really opening up ourselves, for a 30-minute to an hour conversation with them to give them access into IT and really hear their concerns. Mm-hmm. And what we saw is when we did that, our numbers were going up on satisfaction 3%, 5%, 4% a year. And, continuing to rise up. And it's been a great tool for us because it has opened up that trust level where they know that we're not hiding stuff, and we'll show them like, you know what, your group rated us 100%, let's say, but we aren't so good for everyone else. And we show them all the scores for the other departments. So we're transparent about it. And so we have that trust built up. Yeah. And then they know that we're not going to hide stuff from them, that we're going to be, you know, doing our best to be honest and open with them. But also when we have to come to them on something, they know that it's because we need to do it rather than something that we just, you know, want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. IT leaders need to build that cross-functional trust and build allies outside of IT. And, you know, I think IT really needs to be seen by the rest of the company as a business enabler. And that really depends on an IT leader's ability to connect IT to the outcomes that the business actually cares about. So, yeah. I mean, we're at a stage now where we bring someone from tech into, you know, the sales challenges or the marketing issues or even like customer service. And tech can often find a solution that, you know, other areas of the business just can't see. And it makes it so seamless because we can fix things faster when we invite IT into the conversation.
I definitely agree with that. You know, if you have the right people from IT, it can really help.
Yeah.
And part of that, and when I look at it, you know, I came out of the development side. I was a software engineer and a programmer for a long time. And all of that, you know, through school and computer science, it was all about problem solving, you know, creative ways to solve problems. And I think that's a gift that IT people have, is a different way of looking at things to solve some problems.
Yeah.
As long as they understand, you know, as long as they understand a little bit or enough about the business that they can do that. So I think from an IT standpoint, if you're an IT leader, you need to make sure that your staff has that understanding of the business and why they do some of the stuff that they do, so that when they get called into those meetings, they have a better knowledge and they can actually come up with better ideas.
Yeah. I mean, would you suggest, you know, IT leaders talk to different department heads and ask to sit in on meetings and maybe even survey departments on like what they need help with, what their challenges are, so that they can offer a potential, you know, tech or AI or automation type solution for some of those challenges?
Yeah. I think if you do that, if you're always going in there of how can we just offer you something else, they're gonna start to turn off on that, because now you're just coming in with a lot of different stuff. I think going in there and hearing their pain points and really, to be honest, listening to the frontline people. Yeah. Because those are the ones that we've gotten our ideas for the best innovations from, because they're in it every day. You go to the leadership in the program, they hear about some stuff, but the frontline people are the ones that know what needs to be changed, and they're the ones that we run our ideas through. And if they can see the benefit to it, or if they come to us and say, you know, we're having this problem with whatever situation, then we know what we can start focusing on. So I think it's, you know, listening not just to the leaders of the other programs, but actually down to the front line and having that time where, you know, that they feel open enough to be able to come and talk to us.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. So moving on to, you know, for a leader who's used to leading through their technical skill set, how do they start building their people stack? Like, where can they begin that doesn't feel like fluff or outside of their comfort zone? What's your advice there?
There's a lot of great lead training on LinkedIn and online that you can find on these quote unquote soft skills. But I think that's part of it. Getting involved in networking groups with other leaders that are going through it, I think is another great thing. I'm a member of SIM, the Society for Information Management here in Vegas, and I know there's chapters all around the country. That's a great time where we talk about topics like this in our monthly meetings. So I think kind of getting out there with other leaders that are going through this and, you know, really networking with them and doing that. I know that's sometimes hard for those technical leaders, because a lot of our tech leaders, and I was that way, are more introverted, and they have a hard time getting out there and sharing. But I think that's something we can work on and get over to become a better leader. Yeah. So I think, you know, seek out those opportunities. There's a lot of, you know, conferences online that you can watch. There's a lot of webinars that you can watch that talk about this type of stuff. If you're members of Infotech or Gartner, they have workshops on these actual issues. I was at the Infotech conference a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was a 40-minute workshop on psychological safety. And that's fantastic. So that was great to see that it was packed in there. So things like that, seek out those opportunities because they're out there.
Okay. That's great. What's your perspective on what role IT leaders should play in shaping AI decisions inside of an organization?
That's a tough one because, AI in some ways is the technical product, but it's also, I think we just need to be part of that stakeholder team. I think there needs to be a team on there and maybe kind of guiding it a little bit, but not pushing it. It's, showing the capabilities, giving people an idea of what it can do and let them make the decision whether or not it would work for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much buzz, especially around agentic AI now. So how do you think IT leaders can stay grounded in human oversight while embracing this AI revolution?
I think that one really goes back to, showing how it's going to help the experiences, showing how it's going to help your people to do stuff. We're going to take an agent to do these certain tasks, build this agent to do, whatever the task is. And while it's doing that, we're freeing you up to do more important stuff. Mm-hmm. I think it's showing them the benefit and how it really impacts them. The whole what's in it for me is a big concept that you have to work on, but showing them that by you're freeing up the menial stuff that they don't need to be doing and that they don't need to focus on, and letting them be, more influential or do more important things. And I think most people like that. They want to be involved in those bigger projects, those ones that have, more impact on the business, because those are higher visibility. And so they want to do that rather than just, the little things that we can do. So when you're looking at AI, it's about how can you improve. And you're looking at agentic, how can that help them out to make their jobs more valuable?
Okay. Let's talk implementation. One of my goals for this show is to give IT leaders just some real actionable advice, which you have done so well, by the way. But what do you think is one change maybe that you've made recently that reflects this more human-centered approach to IT leadership that our audience can walk away with and apply? And I'd love to hear how your team responded to it.
With us, it's, going through COVID, we were really busy. We were the last ones to start sending our people home and all that. Mm-hmm. And we were here in the office a lot. So for me, it was, showing appreciation to our team and doing that more. We did a district-wide initiative to do, they have an employee of the month and those kind of things. But then also we call them on-the-spot awards. When we see something that someone's doing really good, to be able to give them a reward right away. Being a government agency, we don't have a lot of money. We can't give bonuses. We don't do any of that. So we came up with these ideas. And it might be an Amazon gift card. It might be something small. But doing something like that to show that their work is appreciated, the results are appreciated. But then also, as a leadership team, we try to provide stuff for our staff quite a bit. And it comes out of our own pockets, but we're bringing in lunch. We're bringing in dessert, stuff like that. Just showing them that when they're in the office that they're appreciated. And I think what we've seen and, treating them this way is very little turnover. Mm-hmm. Our newest employee has been here almost 2 years.
Oh, wow.
In the IT world, that's kind of surprising.
Yeah.
During COVID, we only lost a couple people. And the first one that we lost was probably 7-8 months into COVID. And it's because she moved to the Philippines. Mm-hmm. So we're not losing people, even during the times where people are just jumping job to job, we didn't have that problem because we take care of our people really well. They feel safe. We spend a lot of time on the psychological safety. We spend a lot of time on treating them, I just call it treating them as an adult, not how they want to be treated. And giving them the flexibility, giving them the ability to do their job, giving them the resources to do their job, and making sure that the barriers to doing their job are eliminated.
Yeah, I love this. And at the end of the day, right, whether we're in IT or any other part of the business, we're all human beings. And that is one of the things that I feel like COVID really spotlighted. We've been in the business to business space. And prior to COVID, business to business felt like somebody came in, buttoned up a shirt, put on a tie, like there was a mask. And after COVID, it's like the masks came off and there was no more B2B. It was human to human.
Yeah, once the first dog appeared on a Zoom call, then it was,
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think we were talking to an IT leader once, and of course he was at home and he was grilling chicken wings and having a beer. And I'm like, I love this. I, didn't love COVID, but I love that we got more connected to each other. And at the end of the day, we're all humans. We just want to connect to one another, and we all want that sense of belonging. And that's basically what you're saying is that, you're meeting your team and teaching your team to meet other customers in the business or outside of the business as a human first.
Yep. And I think, with us, I look for other ways where our team can get out and do things. We have a couple conferences that we don't have a good travel budget, so we can't send people to a lot of things. But when I see free events, lunch and learns, webinars, I encourage our team to go. There's a big women in technology group here that a couple of my friends have spearheaded. I encourage our team to go to that as much as possible. I know it takes away a little bit away from what they're doing here, but to me, that personal growth is going to, end up giving us a lot more return than just having them in the office for that hour.
It does.
So I encourage our team to get out there and do that. And especially for our younger people, the newer, the lower level staff members, the ones that are in the entry level positions, I try to give them access into these type of events so they can see that there is more out there for them.
Yeah. It helps so much to just network with other individuals, especially in the same and different industries, right? In the same role and different roles, to just get perspective. And sometimes outside perspective shifts your perspective internally, and it just brings so much back to the organization. Yeah. So I love that. I always encourage them.
Like there's a digital government or a government summit here that we go to every fall. And last time I was there, I went by and my team was there eating lunch. They're all together at the table. And come out, sit with us. We got you to see it. I'm like, I know you all. I want to go meet other people. And I try to encourage them to get out and do that because, I'm in Las Vegas. It's a big city, a couple, 2.5 million people or so, but it's a very small tech community. And I remind them, we're all doing the same type of stuff. So we're at different agencies or whatever. I want you to get out there, meet them, meet these other groups, because there might be a time where we have to do a project with them. Or like when COVID hit, we were working with all the other agencies and, having those relationships really helped. So I encourage them to kind of get out of their shell, get out there and meet other people. I know I've talked to a couple of leaders that are afraid that then they might find something better that's out there. And I'm like, then that's, shame on us if we're not allowing that. We should encourage them to find something better.
Right. Or teach back, right? Teach back what we can do better internally.
Or make sure that we are the better and not have them want to leave for anything else.
Yeah. That's awesome when that happens.
Yep.
If you can reframe one belief that you still see holding IT leaders back from evolving, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it's that their knowledge is really limited to the tech, and they don't want to speak up when it comes to something that's non-tech. That it might be a business thing. It might be, some other thing that they see that they have an idea of, but it's not a technical solution, and being afraid that if I say this, they're going to say, well, you're just the technology. You're just the IT person. What would you know about this?
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. Like one of the beliefs I would love to see dismantle this idea that IT is a service center and not a strategic partner, because that belief has stalled so many important innovations.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of technology leaders have that belief because it's been ingrained in there, and they just need to take that step out and take that risk. I was at a conference and there was a gentleman that worked for Amazon back when they were trying to get out of just selling books and CDs online to actually open up the whole marketplace, talking about it. And he's basically, take bold risks. I think that's something that IT leaders don't do enough.
Yeah.
I think, taking those risks, make sure we're managing the risk, of course, and it's not going to be something that's going to be devastating, but take those bold risks where we see we can really impact and innovate and not be afraid.
Yeah. So tell me about a time that you've seen someone take a bold risk and what happened. Or maybe one time you took a bold risk.
Yeah. No, I was trying to think of a personal one we did.
Yeah.
We went ahead and we changed one of our business structures here. And when I looked at it, we had a partnership as for our food handlers that they were working with a group here in town. So everyone who works in the food industry has to get trained and get a card from us. And we'd outsourced that model. And the big risk was bringing that back in-house and getting rid of this outsourced model and making it a better experience for our people, and also being able to lower the cost. So it was a big change because we're looking at probably about 150,000 people a year or that would need these services. So we went in there, we framed it, we looked at all the business aspects of it. What is the cost of it? What's the ROI? Those type of things. Not how is it going to affect us, but how is it also going to affect all these people that need these cards? And we made that decision, and it's actually worked out really well for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like I was saying before, bold bold risks, they either pay off really big or you learn a whole lot. And either way, it's forward movement, right? Like it isn't like you're going backwards. You can take even the ones that don't pay off big and use it as a springboard to something else.
Yeah. I had another one. It was a couple of years ago. The position above me opened up, and it was basically second in charge of the health district. Mm-hmm. I had the minimum qualifications. I knew I didn't have all the stuff they needed, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to apply for it. I got the interview, went through the interview, ended up not getting the position, which was fine. Mm-hmm. But afterward, a good friend of mine who's now our health officer pulled me aside and he said, you know what? You went in there, you know, everyone else had more experience. They've done this a lot longer, but you went in there and showed everyone else on the board that you're not just the technology guy anymore.
Yeah.
That you have business mindset, that you understand what's going on. He's like, you reframed yourself in their eyes. Then that was, you know, it's kind of a big risk, and I had really nothing to lose, but I did it. And, you know, I wasn't upset that I didn't get the job, but because to me, it was a learning experience.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's such a great way of looking at it. And it's true, right? Like you learned, and then they learned something about you. So it's all positives. So as we wrap up, what's one small but meaningful mindset shift an IT leader could make this week to lead more from a human-centered approach and less like a technologist? I love leaving our audience with something really actionable. So even one shift, one reframe can start to create ripple effects in their organization. So what one small thing do you think could spark that type of momentum?
I think not being afraid to find out what people think about what you're doing there or how your program is working. I think a lot of people like to take that head in the sand approach. Well, we're not getting complaints, but that just might mean you're not hearing them. So really, like, you know, doing that service
attitude. Yeah.
You know, really asking people, and, you know, to be honest with you, how are we doing? How can we do better? Mm-hmm. Because that's something that, as long as you take that information and you're actionable with it, you're going to start to see the dividends down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's one way to begin building that cross-functional trust among, you know, other teams, building allies.
Yep.
Anything else you want to leave our audience with before we wrap up?
Yeah, I know this is a change for a lot of IT leaders. You know, don't just think that it's going to be, you know, overnight. You're going to be able to change it. It's a process, and it will take time. There are going to be some bumps in that road, but it's definitely worth it. And what you'll see as you're starting to implement these things, you might see, you know, changes in your team. They're going to become closer. They're going to become more innovative. And once they start to do that, you start to build momentum. And then once that momentum hits, then the leadership team, if they don't see it yet, once you start building that momentum, they'll see it. And then they'll give you more opportunities. So don't be discouraged if it takes a little while, or it's not as fast as you thought it might be, or not as easy as you thought it might be, but it's going to pay off down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing that I would add to that, just from, you know, our own experience here with our IT team, is that once that momentum gets going, it starts to take a life of its own, and you can't imagine the ripple effects. And there really is, you know, maybe other than the C-suite, there really is no other single department in an organization that is positioned to impact the whole organization strategically as IT is.
Yeah, we had a former finance director. He came in. He used to work at Cisco. He worked in Silicon Valley a lot and came here. A big shift for him. And he pulled me aside one day. He said, you know, I used to think that the finance department was the heartbeat of the business. He's like, but now it's the IT department.
It is. Yeah. And
because we're involved in every aspect.
So. Yeah, 100%. I think IT is the single biggest driver of strategic innovation in a business. And I think we're going to see that become more and more and more true, especially in this age of AI.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Jason, for joining us and for leading with such heart and clarity in a field that really sometimes forgets the human side of innovation. So this wasn't just a good conversation. I think it was a really necessary one, because the role of IT leadership is evolving, and it has to evolve. Definitely. And the future really does belong to those bold enough to evolve with it. So thank you so much. And at technologymatch.com, we believe the same. Our marketplace is built on that one simple idea. When tech decisions are rooted in real human needs, everybody wins. It's not just about matching buyers with vendors. It's about matching people with the partners who get it. So if you want to keep learning from Jason, you can follow him on LinkedIn. I'll link his LinkedIn profile in the show notes. He's a voice worth hearing in the future of IT. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Tonya.